Okay, I'm starting right now. Hey, hello there, hockey fans, and especially hello there to you Flyer hockey fans. How's everyone doing tonight? I'm Brad Marsh, president of the Philadelphia Flyers Alumni. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's going to be a great night. Thank you for joining us, Flyers Alumni Decade Show. As I said a couple times already, it's going to be a great night and it's going to be lots of fun. First off, tonight's show is going to be brought to you by our good friends at Payroll Service Solutions, a company that specializes in small and medium-sized businesses. They can help your company with service and solutions, especially during these times, during these difficult times. Anyhow, Payroll Service Solutions, thank you very much to Dan Majani. And once again, tonight's show is going to be a lot of fun. Two things you got to know about the Flyers alumni. We are very active. In fact, we've had to cancel, or let me say postpone, because we plan to reschedule all the events. We've had to postpone 5 events. We're very active, as I said. Also, we're very proactive. Hence, this new initiative right here, thinking a little outside the box, Flyers Alumni Decade Show. And once again, what's it going to be? A lot of fun. So anyhow, sit back, get a beverage of your choice, and get ready for some great stories, lots of laughs, and we got a great crew lined up, as you all know. And, you know, a couple of things about this alumni I've been talking about here, and the alumni I'm president of. Over the last 4 years, 4.5 years, we've donated to charities in this area, the Philadelphia area, over $950,000. It's just been wonderful being able to have all these activities, all these events that we have, and able to give back to this area. Including that number, we've given just a little over $700,000 to Snyder Youth Hockey, Ed Snyder Youth Hockey. And after this show or tomorrow morning or whenever, I would encourage everybody to Google Ed Snyder Youth Hockey and just understand what this program is. It's Mr. Snyder's legacy. He started many, many years ago, and he's helped change so many lives and improve so many lives for so many kids in the inner city of Philadelphia. It's just incredible what he's done. Our alumni, we're proud to be associated with Snyder Youth Hockey. It's our way of saying thank you to a great man. So here we are. We're getting ready to go. But before I introduce my co-hosts, my 2 co-hosts I got tonight, I got to give a big shout out, a big thank you to retired Sergeant Mr. Ed McAvoy from the Marines. Ed, we couldn't have done it without you, buddy. I know you're a proud member of the Flyers Warriors hockey team as well. A big shout out, everybody, because this guy made it happen for us tonight. So enjoy the show, and thanks to Ed for putting it on, or helping us putting it on. So anyhow, my first co-host, we're buddies from Atlanta Flames Day. It was way back in the 70s. The whole franchise was sold to Calgary. So we're buddies from the Flames days. 2-time Stanley Cup champion with your Philadelphia Flyers for 17 years now, Billy. You were the lead hockey analyst for ESPN Sports way back then. And now, of course, you do the Flyers broadcast for the Flyers team. Billy, great to see you. Thanks for jumping on the call tonight.
It's awesome to be here. And I got to tell you, honestly, I almost didn't recognize you without your helmet on.
Funny. Anyhow, our next co-host.
You did a little hair modification too. Okay.
Yeah. Our next co-host is Liam Maguire, a great friend of mine from Ottawa. He's the leading historian, NHL hockey historian, Liam Maguire. 4 books. I don't know how the hell you wrote 4 books, Liam. Holy smoke. Anytime I talk to you, you got a beer in your hand, you don't make any sense. But anyhow, great friend of the Flyers.
Well, I lost you, Marshy, so I don't know if Billy, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I lost Marshy there.
Brad is doing his impression of being a pylon when he played defense. Oh, no. Oh, he's back. He didn't hear that, did he? Oh, no.
What the heck's going on?
Yeah.
You'll leave for a second and see what happens.
Yeah. Anyhow.
Marshy, we got to say goodbye to you anyway, don't we?
Yeah. See you later.
Well, I should point out that we're going to be talking through with all of our guests. The focus of our show is going to be the Flyers' 1987 run to the Stanley Cup final where they met the Edmonton Oilers. And Brad was a big part of that team, an integral part that went to the finals. He has decided that to make room for the guests that we have, and we've got an unbelievable lineup, that Brad's going to hop over into the back seat of the rocket ship and let the guys that are going to be coming on as our guests sit in the front seat. So very gracious gesture on your part, and that's the kind of player you were. So this is where I kiss you goodbye. Thank you for being here.
Okay, see you later, guys. Have a good night. I'll be working the back room here. Okay,
all right.
thank you.
Sure you will, Marky.
Liam, how you doing, man? You doing
Billy,
good,
I'm
Liam?
doing great. I want to thank Ed McAvoy as well. This is my second one doing with him. He's outstanding to be able to pull this together, as Marshy said. I want to thank Brad for bringing me part of the Flyer alumni for the last few years, starting with the 50th anniversary and Friday Night Fights, the first edition last year. And God willing, we'll get another one off the ground when the world comes up for air here underneath this pandemic. And Bill, lastly, just a real thrill to be with you, man. I mean, you've joined me on various incarnations of my radio shows over the years, and we've talked Flyer hockey at different times, and this is just going to be an absolute blast tonight. It couldn't be more low key in terms of pressure. It's just all about having fun, having a couple of pints, and enjoying ourselves tonight. So I'm really happy to be with you, buddy.
So thank you. It's great to be with you as well. My message for Ed McAvoy is very simple. Ed, we're all counting on you. This is your big chance. And Liam, you're the historian. You're the historian. You've got numbers and anecdotes and things in your head that I can't even imagine being able to store in this big noggin. So when we meet our guests and introduce our guests, I'm going to rely on you to fill in a lot of the blanks about their bios and who they really are. Fair enough? Okay.
Fair enough, Billy.
Let's get started. The first player that we're going to bring to the screen was a center that wore number 20, and he was such a fan favorite because he worked so hard. He was also the captain of the Flyers for 6 seasons. He is in the Flyers Hall of Fame, and he is Dave Poulin. Poulin, how are you, man?
I think I'm okay, Billy. I don't know how to answer that question these days. Liam, great to see you as well. But, you know, you're talking to different people around the country, and they say, how you doing? And I'm a real optimist, and the glass is always half full. And normally I would say terrific. And right now I say, I don't know. I don't know how I'm doing. I have no idea.
Stay tuned. You'll be great by the time the show is over. Liam, fill in some of the blanks about Poulin that people might not know.
Well, you talked about his captaincy, Billy, and I think it should be noted, this is a guy that wasn't drafted in the NHL and is on record as being the third longest serving captain in Philadelphia Flyer history. I think is remarkable. Comes out of the University of Notre Dame, doesn't get drafted, goes to Sweden. Ted Sater sees him, recommends him to Philly, comes to the American Hockey League, lights it up there. But you want to know a real cool story about Dave Poulin, anecdotically. His first game in the NHL, 1983, in Toronto, in front of family and friends, second last game of the season. He scores not one, but 2 goals, scores the first goal of the game. His second goal of the game turned out to be the game winner, but even better, his first goal, one of the players who assisted is Daryl Sittler, and his second goal, one of the players who assisted is the late Pelle Lindbergh. How about that for a start of an NHL career? Ladies and gentlemen, of your Flyer faithful, Dave Poulin.
All right, Davey, sit tight, man. We're going to get some good discussions going. We're going to get some
Sounds good, guys.
Going.
Thank you.
You bet. We want to welcome our second guest to the screen. And this player truly embodied the Flyers spirit. And he owned the Flyers crease for 11 of his 13 NHL seasons. He is also a member of the Flyers Hall of Fame. And he is none other than the great Ron Hextall. Hexy, hope to see you. There you are. Hey, Hexy, how are you, man?
Hi, guys. How are we doing?
We're doing great. Thanks for doing this. I know that Liam's been working hard on coming up with anecdotal things about you, and he noticed right away, we were talking earlier, that you had so many wonderful numbers filled up in so many columns, including one of the columns that goaltenders don't usually fill up. What was that column, Liam?
Well, I don't know. You could go with penalty minutes, you can go with suspensions, but let's not go there now, Ronnie. We won't visit there too much. You know, Ron, I got to tell you, first of all, one of the neatest things I love is the family connections in hockey. It's more prevalent in hockey, that I think anyway, than any other professional sport. It starts, as you know, with your grandfather not only scoring the overtime game winner to win the New York Rangers the Stanley Cup in the 1940s, but unique to Philadelphia because this is a Philadelphia Flyer alumni event. Your grandfather had experience in Philadelphia playing for a team called the Ramblers in 1937, where he led the league in goal scoring. In the Philly Arena, they played on Market Street. For anybody who's familiar with the city of Philadelphia, I'm assuming most are watching. I think that's a tremendous connection. Your father played, your uncle played, your son was drafted. And as Billy says, your penalty minute totals, buddy, we may touch on it a little bit, but in 1987 in the playoffs, you set a record that has never been touched or broken since. 43 PIMs. It sure is great to welcome you to this Flyer decade broadcast tonight.
Thank you. Look, I was very misunderstood by the referees.
Multiple times in multiple games, I'm sure. I did point out, Hexie, that you embodied the Flyer spirit. That should have said it all, should it not, of where we were going? Anyway, thanks for jumping in here with us. We're going to have a fun night. And our last guest that's going to join us right now, and I should point out that the list is long as the show goes on. Mike Keenan is going to join us. Mark Messier is going to join us. JJ Daigneault is going to join us. But right now, Mark Howe is in the house. Played 10 of his 22 pro seasons with the Flyers. He made playing defense look really easy. Every time I watched him play, man, Mark Howe made it look easy. He is not only a member of the Flyers Hall of Fame, but he is a member of the Hockey Hall of Fame. Howie, it is great to see you, Professor Mark Howe.
Yeah, Bill, good to see you. Liam, Davey, and Hexie, good to see all you guys.
See you, Howie.
So guys, let's get this rolling with the thought about this, the 86-87 season. You had, and Hexie, you weren't there yet, but in 85, you guys went to the finals. Howie, Poulin, you went to the finals. You lost to Edmonton. 86, you ended up with another 100-plus point season, but you flamed out in the first round against the New York Rangers. So I'm curious as to what you thought you had going into 86-87. Was there a moment or a game or a week or a series of games where you said, you know what, we got something special here? Or did you already know that? Poulin, why don't you start it?
Yeah, I think we knew we were pretty good. We finished at the top of the league 2 years prior and maybe second in the league in 85-86. We went through so much emotion in 85-86, and we were a really good team. And I think when we played the Rangers in that 5-game series, we had nothing left emotionally. We'd been through the tragedy with Pelle Lindbergh, and we'd literally given everything that we had at that point. And then a long summer and a lot of training went on, and we came back, I think, with a real vengeance. And when I look at that 84-85 team, Billy, the ages are just amazing. When you look at Hockey DB, and it gives you the exact ages of the entire team at that point. I mean, there were two 19-year-olds in Derek Smith and Peter Zezel. I think there were three or four 20-year-olds.
You were the youngest team in the league. You were the youngest team in the league, were you not?
Though. And not only young, but 19, 20, 21. And then when we came around 86, 87, I think the unknown was really in net. And we had lost Lindbergh, and Bobby Froese and Darren Jensen had done a great job and actually won the Vezina the year before, or the Jennings Trophy, the goals against. But the wild card was Hexie in net. And we didn't know him. He didn't know us. We knew he was a great minor league goalie. And skating around in warm-up before the first game, or in the pregame skate in the morning in the Spectrum, I remember saying to Bobby Froese that morning, "Hey, how you doing?" And he said, "Not very good." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "They're playing the kid tonight." And I was shocked. I said, "Really?" And so that's the first I heard that Hexie was going to play the opening game of 86-87. And he was the variable. He was the wild card. And just as Pelle Lindbergh taught us how to win in 84-85, I think Hexie took us to another level and said, he didn't have to teach us how to win. He expected us to win. He expected to win every game he played. And we just played like that.
Yeah,
I want to get to Hexie about what you just said.
Question. Billy?
Yeah, before we get to Hexie, Liam, I know that we had talked about this and about the size of the shoes that Poulin had to fill, which was one of his challenges when he became captain of the Flyers.
Yeah, and actually just before that, just back it up just a little bit because we didn't give Mark Howe, even though everybody knows him, I want to give him his due here because he has a couple of things that I think Flyer faithful may not be aware of. The Olympics in hockey has been an official sport since 1924. The youngest man ever to win a medal in Olympic hockey history is Mark Howe with Team USA in 1972, a silver medal. He was 16 years old. That's unfreaking believable. The next year he wins the Memorial Cup and he's MVP of the Memorial Cup. Then he goes to the WHA to play with his brother and his father and wins Avco Cups before turning into the NHL with the Hartford Whalers and then later, of course, with the Philadelphia Flyers. Where those 10 years you talked about, Billy, he was plus 349 in those 10 years with the Flyers. He was a three-time runner-up for the Norris Trophy. And you can't say anything about Mark Howe without saying one quick story or one quick anecdote about his father. There's no man in the history of sports who combined longevity with excellence more than Gordie Howe. And this is his son, who's on the panel with us tonight. So I think that needed to be said. And to you, Poulin, talking about filling big shoes, what Billy said, you're taking over the captaincy from Bobby Clarke. And I wanted to ask you, after taking it for a couple of years, what was your role? How did you see it as captain with the Flyers? Can you tell us a little bit behind the scenes when you went in the dressing room, especially, as the regular season was winding down and into the playoffs? What was your role like as captain with this team that was so good, very talented, but very young?
Well, Liam, when I started, my second year in the league, when I was named captain, I tried to understand why. And instead of just playing, I tried to think of what I was supposed to do as captain. That wasn't the way to do it. But I really think of that locker room, and one of the guys sitting right now, in a square below me, and Mark Howe, there was so much great leadership in that locker room. And I looked at my role as a liaison between that locker room and our head coach, Mike Keenan. And that's what I felt. I felt it was my job to be able to give him a pulse of what was happening. But it was the room. I mean, the leaders in that room, from Mark and his defense pair, the dearly departed Brad McCrimmon, Brad Marsh, Timmy Kerr, just great leaders in that room. And then young leaders that we didn't even know at that time, like, Rick Tocchet and Ronnie Sutter, that were leaders. And Murray Craven, really an understated leader. So I think it was making sure everyone was on the same page and making sure we were all organized. And we were a really good team, but we had a lot of leadership in that locker room.
No doubt. Hexie, Poulin already alluded to this, that you wanted to win every game. And I know that as a general manager, you have always been one that preaches patience with young players. But perspective, right, has two sides. You were in your second year as a pro in the minors when tragically Pelle Lindbergh died, and you did not get the call. Did you want the call? Did you expect the call? And would you have been ready for the call?
Yeah, no, I didn't expect the call. I wasn't ready for the call. I know there was some talk calling me up during the Rangers series. I want to say it was after Game 4. The reason I know is because the coach at Hershey at the time, John Paddock, grabbed me. I think we were on our way to New Haven for a playoff game, and he grabbed me and said, "Things don't go well tonight. You're going up for tomorrow night for Game 5, which was a deciding game." So we get into New Haven, and I get to my room, and Flyers lost. I can't remember the score, so I kind of expected that I was going to go down for Game 5 with the Flyers, and I didn't. They left me in New Haven to play for Hershey and finish the year out there. We lost in the Calder Cup Finals, and that was big for me, the playoffs. And I felt like next year in September when I came to camp, I was ready to play, and not to play 20 games, but to play a significant amount of games.
And you were.
Ronnie,
Billy, Mark Messier has dropped into the house. Are you, Mess? Am I seeing things, or is Mark Messier with us?
He was
is,
just
I
muted.
can't-
You're good now, Matt.
No, I'm with you now.
Hey, Mess, good to see you, man.
Yeah,
How are
how's
you?
everybody doing?
We're doing great. Thanks.
I'm doing great. Great to be with you all.
Good. Yeah, we got Dave Poulin, Mark Howe, Ron Hextall on board. Liam Maguire is here, the hockey historian. I just keep doing what I try to do, day in and day out. We're going to bring some other people on the show, and we're trying to move through the Flyers season that ended up leading them to the finals against you guys. And we'll touch on what the Oilers were going through, because I don't think you had as difficult a time getting to the finals in 1987 as the Flyers may have. But just talking to Ron Hextall for a second, and Mess, hang in there, we'll get to you. So Hexy, were there any wow moments for you?
No problem.
Okay, you're so focused, you're so driven, so intense. Were there any wow moments that rookie season, going into a building and going, wow, I didn't think it was going to feel like this or look like this? Or did you even notice the building or the team you were playing?
Yeah, the biggest wow moment for me was when I first came up practicing with the big team. The intensity, the preparation, the speed, and it was all your top guys that were setting the tone. It was the Poulins and the Howes and the McCrimmons and the Timmy Kerrs working hard. And our practices back then were at a pace that I think few other teams were even close to. So I think our practices were 45, 50 minutes. I mean, I came from junior, and even in the minors, you were practicing for an hour and a half to 2 hours every day, and you just couldn't keep that pace. And in Philly, it was 45, 50 minutes. But you better be ready to go first minute, and you better be still working in the 50th minute. So that was the biggest kind of wow for me, of being at the top level and guys practicing as intense and as hard as they did.
Mess, you were trudging along in Edmonton, mowing people down. You were gunning for your third cup in 4 seasons when you met the Flyers. But Hexy just mentioned their practice mode, and it was Mike Keenan's tempo that was set. Was Slats anything like that? Glenn Sather was your head coach. Did you guys have long practices? Because I'm only imagining that the thoroughbreds you guys had might not have particularly liked being on the ice that long, but could have loved going really hard and really short.
Yeah, I think it was something that seemed to work for us. We would practice at the high intensity level that Hexy's talking about. The practices weren't long, but Glenn made us skate every day. No matter whether we traveled or not, we seemed to figure out a way to find ice. And the practices really became a bit of a showcase for us. A lot of people turned out to our practices just probably to see Wayne and some of the other better players on our team, but we seemed to relish the opportunity to put on a show in practice, and it was super high intensity. Execution was excellent, passing sharp, and when you practice like that, the duration isn't as important as the execution, and it seemed to really work for us.
Were you able to sell tickets for the practices? I imagine a lot of people would have come in just to watch, and they would have paid to see you guys.
Well, I'm sure if there was a way back then, they would have thought about it. But Wayne was an amazing attraction, as you can imagine. He had the ability to put on a show and knew that he was on the stage, whether he was in a game or in a practice, and he made practices fun for us, and he made practices for fun for the people that were there in attendance watching. He always do something really incredible, whether it's a game or a practice. And we had a lot of talent on the team. We're really a good skating team, and the goaltending was excellent. So and the drills that were designed for us were to really help us in the kind of style that we played in, high paced, fast action.
Well, there's no question that in that era, in the 80s, the Oilers were the team in the NHL that wore the white hats, and the Flyers were the team that wore the black hats. At least that's how the different franchises were perceived. I want to get started talking about moving through the playoffs, and we'll take it from your standpoint too, Mark, and you can fill us in on what the Oilers were doing in their rounds. But I wanted to start with round one for the Flyers. I know that you guys played the New York Rangers. Flyers finished with 100 points. You were the only team in the Eastern Conference that wasn't East and West, but I'm not going to get into that now. I'm still having trouble about Campbell and Wales and Adams and Patrick and all of that stuff. But in the East, the Flyers were the only team with 100 points. In the West, the Oilers were the only team with 100 points. They had 107 points. So the Flyers in the first round meet the New York Rangers. And in game one, surprise, New York Rangers come into Philadelphia and knock you guys off 3-0. Guys, and anybody can grab this, was this just a little hiccup? What did the Rangers have? They could have hurt you.
Well, I'll start for you, Billy. First of all, I appreciate the heads up that Mess was on the call, because now I'm watching to see where he is on the screen, just so I don't get run over at some point during this show. Because I know he's out there. He's out there somewhere. So I don't have to worry about anybody else, but I know where you are, Mess. You're on the other side of the screen, so I feel safe right now. The Rangers have been a nemesis for the Flyers the last couple of years, because they would sit back 30, 35 points behind us in the standings, but they'd upset us in 83. They'd upset us in 86. And it was almost like it was their right to just cruise through the regular season. So when they won the first game, it was almost that they had flipped the switch again on us and said, well, regular season isn't that important. It's all about the playoffs, and we beat you in the playoffs. And that first game at home, you'd lost home ice, but that was a different Flyers team than it was in previous years for me, even the year before. And even losing that first game 3-0, I felt strongly that we were in good shape and we could win that series.
Liam, you size up every series. What were you thinking about the 87 playoffs as they began?
Well, hold on a second here. First thing is, I want to ask Ron Hextall if he thinks maybe he played the wrong position, because if he had played out, he could have fought more. I mean, he was kicking everybody's ass all the time, setting penalty minute records. He had over 300 PIMs in his first 3 years in the NHL. He set records as a goaltender that'll never, ever be touched. He set a record in the American Hockey League. He had 3 suspensions of 6 games or more his first 5 years in the NHL. He's kicking the shit out of everybody. So, Ronnie, let's talk a little bit about, your on-ice violence, which we all loved, by the way. Let's get that out of the way right now. This isn't a PC broadcast. Every single one of us loved it. So take us through what was going when you snapped and you lost it and somebody was going down, whether it be Chris Chelios or Kent Nielsen. What was going through your mind?
You guys.
Hey, by the way, Don Cherry's got nothing on you
or what?
I'm getting in on this one at some point, guys.
I do remember
at some point. You go first, X.
I do remember a couple times where Mike chewed me out for getting 10-minute misconduct. So I think a lot of those minutes were 10-minute misconducts.
Okay.
Yeah. There you go. Good cover. It's a good thing
I remember Murray Craven coming to the bench and complaining, because Murray Craven was the guy that had to serve all the 10-minute misconducts whenever Hexie got him. So Muzz, we're sorry about that.
Oh, poor Muzz.
Oh, but Hexie, were you the instigator or were you the guy riding into the rescue?
No, I was always the guy that got chopped or got hacked or whatever, and I just had to react or try and help one of my teammates. Or I was the innocent victim.
Yeah. So
Yes, you know that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
I'm with you, win or tie on all of this. But Mark Messier, 6 Stanley Cup rings, 5 with the Oilers, 1 with the New York Rangers. You did it all. You were it all. I said that the Oilers were the guys that wore the white hats and the Flyers were the guys that wore the black hats. Who was the most despised Flyers player in your Oilers locker room?
Oh, that's a good question. I grew up at a very impressionable age when the Flyers were winning the Stanley Cups in the early 70s, and so I grew up with the Broad Street Bullies and understood what the Philadelphia Flyers represented. Fast forward to myself turning pro and going into Philadelphia Spectrum. was an intimidating moment as a young player. And then even fast forwarded to 1987 and 1985 in the finals, and 87 in the finals, which we're talking about tonight. The team still had the aura of those teams. That hadn't gone out of the Flyer DNA at that point, in my opinion, anyways. And they commanded a lot of respect when you went in and played in Philadelphia. And of course, when Mike got there, he demanded that kind of work ethic that the team displayed during that year. And they're a tough team to play against. I personally, I never really despised any player. I think for me, it was just that the other team was trying to take away something that we thought we owned. And so I didn't like the fact that the Flyers were trying to beat us. But as far as individuals are concerned, they played hard. They wanted to win. And I've always said the biggest obstacle or the biggest challenge of any team is a team's belief in themselves. And the Flyers believe that they could win. And that's always the toughest obstacle to overcome, is a team that believes in themselves. And the Flyers believed in themselves that year through all the injuries that they had. No matter what was thrown in their way, they found a way to overcome it. And they presented a very tough team to beat in 4 games.
Let's rewind, guys, back to the first round that the Flyers were playing. It was against the New York Rangers. Rangers won 3-0 in Philadelphia. And as been mentioned, they seem to have your number when it counted the most. But you bounce back, win 8-3 in game 2. You guys, Flyers, have 7 different scores, and you're on your way. You go to New York, you win 3-0, 6-3. Won game 5 at home, and then the offense took over in game 6 against the New York Rangers. I mean, yeah, guys, was one of the secrets to your Flyers team in this run, because I'm looking at the goal scores. Derek Smith, in the game that knocked out the New York Rangers, the scorers were Derek Smith, Doug Crossman, Brad Marsh picking up his 2nd goal in the playoffs. Tim Kerr got 1. Lindsey Carson. So was your depth of people that could contribute one of the keys to it, Howie?
Yeah, I think that's the key to any team winning in the playoffs. I mean, you normally when you have 2 good teams, your stars are matching up against each other, and a lot of times they kind of counteract, and it's your depth. Your secondary scoring is normally what gets you over the hump. And I know with our team, we counted on those guys to win the close games, and they won the battles, and they got a few breaks, and that was the difference for us.
Yeah. We want to move on to the New York Islanders in the second round, and I want your opinions on the Islanders and who the dangerous scorers were for the Islanders, Hexie. But Mark, who did you guys match up against in the first round in '87 on that trip to the finals?
Angela.
Is that for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Liam, or Liam, because Liam's our historian.
Yeah.
It was Los Angeles. Go ahead, Moose.
Go ahead, Liam.
Well, you guys lost the first game. I mean, the thing is you're talking about the Flyers and the Rangers getting over the hump, and the Rangers beating the Flyers in game 1. LA beat Edmonton in game 1. And this is what, 5 years after the miracle on Manchester? So even though a lot of water had gone under the bridge, game 2, Edmonton puts up a 13 spot on LA in game 2. And I think that you sucked the life right out of them there and got on your way. But I think it's interesting that there's a little bit of similarity in that the Flyers lost to the Rangers in game 1. And in fact, if you talk to them, and we got guys here who were there, a lot of the players will say that Dave Brown's fight with George McPhee, about 2 minutes into the game, and there was about 3 more fights in the game. They got back to Flyer hockey, and they took that Rangers out, and then they went on from there. Whereas what did Edmonton do? They just ran LA right out of that rink in game 2 with 13 goals, including 6 in the third period. See ya, wouldn't want to be ya.
I'm telling you, Don Cherry has nothing on you. So Flyers, I love you, Liam. Don't ever change, brother. you're a great teammate to have because we're having fun. Round two. So here comes another rivalry, but I'm trying to figure out who the hell wasn't a rivalry for the Flyers in the East, right? So you play the Rangers, the New York Rangers in the first round, and then you got the Islanders coming in the second round. The Islanders had 82 points, so they had 6 more points in the regular season than the Rangers did. Rivalries, they were as big a rivalry, were they not, as the Rangers at the time? Guys, Hexie?
Yeah, they were certainly close. I think that the old Patrick division there, all those teams, whether it was Washington, the Rangers, the Islanders, even the Devils to some degree, would give us everything that we could handle, even though they weren't a great team at that time. So it was, it's a metropolitan division, and the obviously we played each other a lot, and we hated them and they hated us, and we didn't make any bones about it back then. It was different. We didn't know all the other players and stuff like they do now, but it was different, and they hated us and we hated them, and that's kind of the way we liked it.
Howie, who was a tougher team to play against? Who was a tougher team to play against for you, the Rangers or the Islanders?
For me, they were both, but the Islanders had some guns. They had some really skilled players, but they also they had some grinders. They went to the net hard. The Sutters, they had a good team, and they had a lot of depth. They had a good defense. Kelly Rudy and net, Billy Smith. They were a good team, and they certainly gave us everything that we could handle for sure.
Yeah,
So,
Billy, I'll jump in
this
here
is so
too.
interesting when
You still had
go for it.
You still had the pride of those cups. You still had Bossy, you still had Chacha, you still had Potvin, and you had those 4 Stanley Cups. And 87 arguably was their last run. They won in the first round, and they took us to 7 games. But I believe that was Mike Bossy's final year, and there was still so much pride on that team. Like, you could feel the pride on that team. They weren't as good a team, obviously, as when they had won their 4 straight cups, but they were incredibly proud. And I remember in the handshakes after Game 7, they knew that they had been beaten by a younger, better team. And I think that was a big, big thing for us to get that sort of blessing from the Islanders, whether they knew it or not.
So I look back, guys, at the scores, and I'm trying to get my notes together so I have half a clue what's going on as we move through this. And the game that jumped out at me was the last game of the regular season, and it was the New York Islanders playing in Philadelphia, and it was the last game of the regular season, and they kicked your asses 9-5. Mike Keenan, who's I'm sure listening by now, was nice enough to leave Hexie in for all 9. According to the box score. Tell us about that game. It obviously didn't seem to have any impact on the series that you ended up playing them. But what the hell went wrong in that 9-5 loss? And I looked, and it wasn't as if guys were resting. You had your roster intact. Tell me, but you remember what do you remember about the 9-5 shellacking in the last game of the season by the Islanders? Howie, you were
was
minus
+3.
Yeah.
Howie was +3.
I don't remember that game at all. We tend to forget those ones the best we can. So, but I will say that during that season, we, like I said, Dave Poulin was named captain. Dave came in, and Dave had a job to do, and that was to be at the forefront of our locker room. And I think Dave also felt that he needed to prove himself. And I think some of us players, we wanted Dave to prove himself. And he did that rather quickly. And he became a great, great leader for our group of guys. And we also had a guy behind the bench who's going to join us in a little while, who in Mass, you had him in New York. I don't care if you win 8-1, next day you're pushing to be harder and harder and harder. So I think what Mess said it best, what Mike Keenan did for that hockey club that year, he made us believe that we could win by pushing as hard as he did, and everybody bought into the team aspect of it. And didn't matter whether you lost 9-5. We knew we were going to be a tough team to beat.
So in that Islanders series, you guys had a chance to wrap up the series at home because you were up 3-1 at one point, and you lose 2-1. And it's just a footnote, but the D pair of Doug Crossman and Brad Marsh were -2 in that, because I know you D-men all keep track of that. The forwards, I mean, it's always the defenseman's fault or the goalie's fault when we got a minus, so it didn't really matter. So now you're still up 3-2 in games. You go back to Long Island for game 6. You lose 4-2 with Bossy and Trottier leading the way. And this is such an interesting phenomenon because it happened in the finals against the Oilers, where a team has another team 3-1, and the elimination games are the hardest. Who can speak to that? Mess, can you tell us, because it happens so often, right? A team's up 3-1. Is it the overconfidence or the team letting up on the throttle a little bit that's up 3-1? Is it the team being desperate that's down 3-1? Is it a combination of both of those? Because it happens an awful lot. How do you go from being up 3-1 to having to play a game 7?
Well, very, very easily, very quickly. I think it's a combination of both. I think the margin of error at that particular time of the year is very, very small, one way or the other. And if you think that of the teams that did get up to 3-1, perhaps a lot of those games it could have gone the other way. So I don't think that being up 3-1 is necessarily a great barometer of how the series is going at any particular time. You know, obviously when a team's down 3-1, they have nothing to lose, and they're gonna throw everything they have at you going into game 5. And if the team that's up 3-1 just lets off just a tiny smidgen of their concentration and effort, that's enough to swing the balance completely. And every 7-game series is an event of momentum swings one way or another. And oftentimes it swings both ways. And, you know, and that's why it's a 7-game series really is a real testament of a team that has the, you know, the depth and the talent and the hard work and the commitment and the discipline. You know, because it gives you an opportunity to really kind of, you know, bring that out in a 7-game series of a team. And look at in 87, if that's what we're talking about tonight, we knew the series wasn't over when we got up 3-1. And just because we were coming home, we had enough experience by that time to realize that, you know, it was going to be a tough game at home. And then when we lost that, and then going back for game 6, you know, now you're going into the Lions Den, game 6, and you know, we got trounced pretty good, and just like that, you know, you're at game 7 there. So it's not that uncommon. It's not that that the series is over when any team's down 3-1, in my opinion, especially a tough fought, closely matched series like 87 turned out to be.
Right. Liam, before we let you set up the Oilers' second series, that playoff run, I want to tie up the Flyers series against the New York Islanders. And game 7, the Flyers ended up having the Islanders push them to game 7 and finished the Islanders off 5-1 in Philadelphia. And since I most notably mentioned Brad Marsh -2 in one game, he scored his 3rd goal of the playoffs in that elimination game of the Islanders and was +2. Way to go, Marshy. And Liam, before we tee up the second round series for the Oilers, Hexie, was it easy for you to leave a game behind? How did you do it? And when was it left behind? A tough loss, playoffs, whatever. I know that the goaltenders of all positions have to think in compartments and try to isolate emotions into compartments. How difficult was it for you, and when did you get it all locked up in the vault of leaving it behind after a tough loss?
Well, I think in a perfect world, you know, you let it go right after the game. But I was a deep thinker, and I would think things through, what I could have done better, whether to prepare myself or physically on the ice to stop the puck. But I certainly always let it go the next morning, coming into practice. You got to let it go and you got to get on with it. The easy thing back then is we played every other night. There was I think before game 7, the finals, we had 2 days off, but I don't think other than that, we had 2 days off between games. So if you lost a game, you had 1 day and you were right back at it again. So it was pretty easy to keep the focus to the next game because it was coming on the heels of the last one. The one other thing I'd like to mention about like our team that year, and I think it was Al Hill in that Islanders series, he was a big player for us. Tim Tookie, I think too, if it was the Islanders series, like we don't get to the finals without effort from, you mentioned Derek Smith and guys like that, but also guys that weren't in our lineup short of injuries. Like I said, Tim Tookie, I think he played some power play for us, and Hilly was killing penalties and taking some face-offs for us. So Donnie Knockbauer played a few games. So those role players, I think Mess said it earlier, your depth and those role players, if those guys don't play good, you're not going to win, not 4 series.
Right. Liam, can you set up the second round series for us that the Oilers had to play?
Yeah, absolutely. They played the Winnipeg Jets, and we'll get Mark's comments on that in a second. Just, the thing about that Islanders series with the Flyers is Brian Trottier and Mike Bossy really willed that team to victories, I think, in game 5 and 6 to force that game 7. For the Flyers to come in and win decisively like they did in game 7, I think it was one of the best franchise wins, really, since Billy, you guys won that cup in 75, your second of 2. So that said, the Oilers, you look on paper and you say an easier run because they swept the Jets. But the first game went in overtime, right, Mark? And Glenn Anderson scored. And, you guys had so many weapons. And Glenn Anderson sometimes, not too often, but sometimes gets lost underneath, yourself and Gretz and maybe Coffey, a little bit, Yari Curry. And he scored so many big goals for you guys. And you win game 1 in OT. And you win game 2 like 5-3. And then you go in Winnipeg, get 2 more wins. On paper, it's 4 straight. But none of those games were easy. Yeah, Dale Howardchuk in his absolute prime. The Jets were 2 years removed from tying an NHL record with 630 goal scorers. They were probably one of the best teams in the league, but they had the misfortune, in hindsight, as we look now statistically, you have the Flames and the Oilers in the same division. So, Mark, maybe you can comment if you have any thoughts on, you did play Winnipeg more than once over those years, and they had a nucleus there that you played against, including obviously Dale Howardchuk, and we send our prayers to him in his cancer fight right now.
Yeah, no question. We had a lot of respect for the Jets. They had some great years in the mid '80s. There, they were pushing us hard. Howardchuk was an amazing leader. They had a lot of depth. I think the one year they had 9 players that scored over 20 goals. We had the wild factor on our side every year. Wayne, you take all those teams in the '80s there and put Wayne on that team, and it might have been a different story. And then you when you talk about guys like Glenn Anderson, Glenn only cared about one thing, and that was winning. If we were winning 8-1, he didn't even care if he played another shift of the game. He wasn't interested in goals or assists or anything. He just wanted to be on the ice when the game was on the line, and he had an uncanny ability to score big goals at big times. And when you add that kind of depth to players like Wayne and Yuri and Paul and the goaltending that we had, our depth was substantial, and when you talk about the Jets, it's not an easy place to play there either, and that wasn't the only great series we had with Winnipeg. When I was with Edmonton, they pushed us to the brink a few times.
Howie, I want to direct this question to you. How easy was Hexie to play in front of? You were a D-man. Was he easy to play in front of? Or was there a learning curve to learning to play in front of Hexie?
There was a little bit of a learning curve. And as everybody knew, Hexie was great at handling the puck. So the puck would go back to him. Every once in a while, I'd want to get back there, pick it up, and whine and go the other way. Well, that wasn't happening with Hexie. So it cost me 1 or 2 goals against, because I'd call him off and he wouldn't hear me or whatever. And so I said, well, from now on. But once I learned, it became a great asset for me, especially killing penalties and Dave Poulin and Brian Propp being up front. And, I think I had 7 or 8 shorthanded goals one year, and it's all because of that guy right there. So I would just read the play. I know Hexie's going to fire the puck up the ice. And once I saw either Dave or Brian open, then I could jump into a seam. And if guys weren't on the ball, boom, I could lead a rush 2-on-1. And we scored a lot of shorthanded goals. And that was the learning curve with Hexie. The one thing that we always knew, he made incredible saves all year long, from the beginning of camp in September till we finished that season in June up in Edmonton. And we knew we had a guy that we could count on. And even if you made mistakes, it didn't matter. He covered up for us. And that's part of what I think all goalies go through. Once you get to trust that team and they believe in you, it just makes everybody's confidence, and it makes it so you don't take chances, but you can be more assertive and more aggressive in your play because you know he's there to back you up.
Dave Poulin, was Hexie an easy rookie to accept into the fold?
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, I refer back to the fact that he just wanted to win. I mean, that's all that mattered to him. And we actually had to get the whole backup goalie situation straightened out. Bobby Froese wasn't happy in his role as a backup goalie. Clarkey made the trade in, I'm going to say December, traded him to the Rangers and brought Shell Samuelson back, who ended up being a huge piece for us, both literally and figuratively a huge piece for us. But he wasn't what it might appear from the outside. He was not a high maintenance guy. He wasn't a high maintenance guy in the locker room, and he simply wasn't. He just played and wanted to win and wanted to go on and play the next game. So it wasn't like you weren't dealing with a diva or an ego or any of the stuff that you might think a player that flamboyant on the ice was. None of that stuff was off the ice at all.
We want to get very quickly to the Montreal series because JJ Daigneault has joined the group. JJ, good to see you. And your moment in the sun is we're only a few minutes away from that, so stay patient, as you had to do many times in your career, as I did. Just be patient. Try to stay ready when your name is called when you're on the bench.
Sounds good.
We're gonna bring you in and talk about the Montreal series next. I just want to finish up this.
How are you, Dave? Good to see you.
Jean-Jacques,
Good to see
you.
I want to get started on the Montreal series. So, guys, your Flyers had, because you let the Islanders push you to 7 games, you only had 1 day off. Obviously, it didn't seem to be that much of a problem, although game 1, you trailed in the third period and you tied it. And I was looking at the numbers today. Ilka Sinisalo scored a game-winning goal in overtime. May his soul rest in peace. He passed away 3 years ago. How important was a player like Ilka Sinisalo to the Philadelphia Flyers? Hexie, Poulin, jump in, go for it. Howie.
Well, Poulin just talked about no maintenance guys. I was kind of Ilky. He was a very underrated talent. He was one of the guys in practice that I had the hardest time to stop. He camouflaged his shot extremely well. He had great deception. Big guy, skated well, and he was just an honest player, an honest worker, and like I said, he had an underrated skill level, in my opinion.
And Billy, I think he wanted to be under the radar. Like, he was that kind of guy. He didn't want the spotlight on him. I think if you had made him a first or second line player, he wouldn't have been as effective. And I said to him one day, you can score 40 goals in this league. And he looked at me and he said, well, then they'd want 50. And, he was just happy being a guy. He just wanted to be a depth guy, with your real personality on him and a really fun guy. But he wanted to be in a support role more than a lead role.
Yeah. Mr. Historian, Mr. NHL Guru, Liam Maguire.
Yeah.
Jump in, man. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on in.
Billy, I'm experiencing a little bit of a delay. So I need you to kind of give me a shot when you do. And when you do, I'll jump in, pal. But thank you very much.
Okay.
You know, Sinisalo, he scored his first goal ever in the NHL on a penalty shot. And I think he's one of only 5 guys to do that. And talking about Poulin's first game in the NHL, with Sittler drawing one of the assists on his first goal and late Pelly Lindbergh on his second goal, Sinisalo actually assisted them both, right, Poulin? And
yes, he did.
I think it's pretty amazing stuff. I mean, the guy was absolutely gifted, both ends of the ice. I didn't know him, obviously, as you guys did, as a player in the room and on the team, but watching from afar and on my TV screen, Hockey Night in Canada mostly, he was unbelievable. And I mean, the Flyers, you know, that Flyers team, that run in '87. If you look at those 3 years when Keenan first came in, they were the #1 penalty killing team in the NHL. And we got 2, if not 3, of the reasons here right now, because there's never been a goaltender that has handled the puck better than Ron Hextall. There's never been a defenseman better shorthanded in the history of the National Hockey League than Mark Howe. And Poulin, you're one of the greatest defensive shorthanded specialists in the history of the league as well. And what guys, like, you guys must have been drawing penalties, which is kind of the Flyer norm and has been for decades. It was in those days, and just said, oh, bring it on. We'll kill this one and score anyway, so who cares? I mean, it really was remarkable how well you guys could play shorthanded.
Well, if you want a job killing penalties, you should apply with the Philadelphia Flyers, shouldn't you? I mean, that makes total sense to me. You're going to get a lot of work. And, you know, we had the edge. We were good offensively. And I think when other teams were on the power play, the first thing they said was, you got to watch these guys. Well, if that's the first thing the other team says, then you've already got an edge. And, you know, we were fully confident in our shorthanded abilities. And by the way, we did have a lot of practice at it, Liam.
Hey, Poulin, that's how I got my start with the Flyers too. So I understand that. And I can tell this is just a little side note because it's not part of the core of what we wanted to talk about. One of my great thrills as a broadcaster was calling Rendezvous 87 in Quebec City, the 2-game series between the best in the NHL and the best Russians. And you were magnificent in that series, including that goal that you scored. It was a shorthander, if I'm not mistaken, but it was top corner. Whether or not it was a shorthander. Hope that was as great as experience for you as it was for me.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. That was, you know, Mess was a huge part of that. And that was that famed Russian Red Army team and that KLM group that were, and they said to us, whatever you do, don't watch them practice. Watch them practice. So, of course, Kevin, Deneen, and I snuck in and watched them practice for about 10 minutes one day. And everybody was one time in the puck, and they were all over the place, and the puck was on a magic string. And we just looked at each other and said, yeah, they're right. We shouldn't have watched them practice.
So I want to move on to the Montreal series and get through that. Game 2 goes to Montreal. They win 5-2. It was 4-0 into the third period. The fourth score by Montreal, the fourth goal was scored by Claude Lemieux. Were you guys a fan of his?
Quiet player.
I don't. There's a lot of fans in Detroit that he's not too popular with either. So
right.
But
right.
You got to give Claude his kudos. He was a great performer at playoff time. He made some enemies, but he did his job. He did what he was supposed to do.
Yeah. So you go up to Montreal for Game 3. By the way, in case you guys didn't know, there's some of the best ballet performances on the continent in Montreal. So put that on your list of artistic endeavors to look through next time you're there. Just wanted to point that out for anybody that wants to gain a little culture. Okay. And
where Cirque du Soleil started, isn't it, Billy? Is that Cirque du Soleil you're referencing?
I knew there would be a culturally attuned person, and it's you, Poulin. Cirque du Soleil. So Game 3 in Montreal, you guys are down 2-0, then you score 4 the next 5. Pelly Eklund had 2 goals. He got a hat trick later. So for Mark Messier and for the Flyers guys, if you had to pick one unsung hero in your 87 run to the finals, could you name one? Mess?
I don't know. I never think Kevin Lowe gets as much credit as he deserves.
Fish.
a 6 Stanley Cup time winner. Came out of junior as a great offensive defenseman. Realized the Oilers didn't need that with Paul Coffey, and really kind of honed his game to be a shutdown defenseman. Had the ability to score a big goal when we needed it, as we saw in those series. But it's hard to think of Kevin as an unsung hero because he played so much, and he did have a lot of accolades coming his way. But I just don't think he ever really got the recognition that he deserved for how important he was to our teams.
Mm-hmm. Flyers guys, got one?
I think we had 20 unsung heroes every night. Like the passion that our group played with, and the togetherness, and the blocking shots. And I mean, every night someone was blocking a shot or scoring a big goal or making a greasy play to get a puck out and going to the net. I mean, it was just it was a 2-month battle for us. And as you guys mentioned earlier, we didn't have an easy series. They were all tough series, and we didn't get much time off in between. And I mean, we get to it with Poulin's injury and how he was dragging himself in the rink every day. But obviously we lost Timmy. But I just felt like every night, every guy in our team, you just mentioned Eklund stepping up in Montreal there. It was, for us, it was a different unsung hero or a different hero every night.
So I'm going to fast forward to Game 6 in Montreal. You guys go to the Forum with the chance to eliminate the Montreal Canadiens because you're up 3-2. And one of the greatest spectacles in the history of hockey occurred not in the game, but before the game, in the warm-up. And it was so interesting for me to watch because I was there calling the game for ESPN. Doc Emmerich and I were up in the booth, and we had multiple holy shit moments like, can this really be happening? So we have video of this. I'm going to set it up before we roll the video. So the Montreal Canadiens, Shane Corson and Claude Lemieux had this ritual, good luck charm, of waiting till their opponents left the ice after the warm-up, pregame warm-up. They'd shoot the puck down into the empty net, score an empty net goal. Life is good in Montreal, right? Well, the Flyers, I don't know specifically, but we'll find out how many players knew about the ritual and how many were in on the ending of the curse. A couple of players on the Flyers team, namely Chico Resch and Eddie Hospodar, decided, well, they weren't going to leave the ice until Shane Corson and Claude Lemieux left the ice. And when they left the ice, then Hospodar and Chico would leave the ice, and Montreal would not get their empty net goal in the warm-up, right? So if we can, Ed, if you're ready to roll tape, well, I want to walk everybody through this. We're not going to show the whole brawl because it's crazy. You won't be able to keep up with it. But when Ed Hospodar was convinced, and there's Shane Corson and Claude Lemieux, might not be able to see them. They're not moving too fast right now, kind of pixelating. But there's a curtain on Montreal's side of the ice. What happened was Shane Corson hid behind the curtain, right? Eddie Hospodar, they're pretty sure that the enemy has left the building. There's Boxcar Hospodar. Come on, Eddie, you gotta move faster now, man. Lower line. No rest, there's one more look. And when Lemieux and Corson are convinced that Hospodar and Chico Resch are off the ice, they come again. It wasn't because that Hospodar was really they went back out. Corson scores. Hospodar doesn't know Shane Corson. Chico Resch is really spectating this thing. And then Hospodar begins to wail. Players coming out one at a time. Hospital did really well. And as players started trickling back onto the ice, more fire was thrown on the gas was thrown on the fire. As soon as Brownie got out there and Chris Nyland were out there, I mean, all hell broke loose, right? But there was one player who was conspicuously absent from the melee and from the fight. And as we've discussed on the show, he's one of the most combative Flyers. and he's the man that tended goal, Ron Hextall. And legend has it, mind you, there was no camera in the locker room, so this is just legend, that Mike Keenan, Flyers head coach, was able somehow to restrain Ron Hextall from joining the brawl on the ice. And as soon as Mike joins us, we're going to find out exactly what happened in that locker room, and we're going to get confirmation. And Hexie, I got to let you know, if he was able to restrain you, it is confirmation that he was able to physically overpower you. How could that be? Little skinny Mike Keenan overpowered the mighty Hex.
First of all, we found out who the goon was in goal. It was Chico Resch. Right. So
great. Oh, so Mike hasn't joined us
what
yet.
happens is the trainer comes in. The trainer comes in and tells us all that Eddie and Chico are out fighting. So all of a sudden our guys just go filtering out. And I got after warm-ups, I take my pads off and my skates off to retighten them before the game. So I'm sitting there, I got my pads off and my skates off. So quickly everybody's gone and I do my skates up, I put my pads up, and I literally just get up to walk out the door. And I was the first guy in the door. And guess who walks in? Mike. I'd like to hear his version too. But so Mike walks in, he slams the door, goes, "You're not going out."
Well, Hexie, were you the only guy left in the room at this time?
I was the only guy left in the room.
Okay.
Slams the door, and he puts his back against the door and he says, "You're not going out." I said, "Mike, we're going to be down one man." And I pleaded with him. I begged. I don't know how long it was. It seemed like forever, but I pleaded and I begged. "Just let me go out. I promise you I won't fight." I said, "I'll just grab somebody so we're even." I had 23. Everybody dressed, more than 20 guys back then. We probably had 22, 23 guys dressed, and maybe they did too. And in the meantime, I could hear the crowd just going absolutely crazy. So I'm in the locker room by myself with Mike, thinking that one of my teammates is getting obliterated 2-on-1 because I'm in this room right here. So I begged and pleaded with Mike again. And we were close. Like I was like, "Mike, I gotta go." Like I was a little bit intense and he was too. So that's my recollection. And then he just said, "If you go out there, someone's going to sucker you. And it's not, that's not what we need right now."
When you say you were close, you're not talking about in a spiritual sense. You were physically close together, right?
We were physically close together, but there was nothing bad. I'm interested to hear what he says. But.
Mike. Well, I think
you know what? Ironically, Chico comes back in after this big brawl, and I'm sitting there, and he looks at me and he goes, "What happened to you?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He says, "You look awful." And it was the emotional stress that I went through of thinking that guys are out there and somebody's getting their clock cleaned by two guys because I'm sitting in the room. Great teammates sitting in the room and everybody else is out there fighting.
That is so, guys. Howie and Poulin, did you guys know about this Montreal ritual? Like, was that common knowledge that you guys talked about Lemieux and Corson staying on the ice after the warm-up?
Well, I didn't know about it. I didn't know about it before, but after talking to Chico, I mean, that whole brawl started because of superstition. That's the ironic thing about it. And
right.
The other part was in our locker room, we always sat in numerical order. So I always sat next to the entrance. And Mess would know, he started in the WHA as well. Well, some of the brawls we used to have down there. So with me being one of the smaller guys, I grabbed my stick. I ran out the door on the ice with my stick in hand. Doug Crossman was in the bathroom, and he had his sandals on, so he had sandals. But I had a bird's eye view. Dave Brown came out, and he looked like a heat-seeking missile. He was eyeing up Chris Nyland, and Chris Nyland, they locked eyes. They were like 5 feet from me, and they went toe-to-toe for about 2 minutes. They were both exhausted. They held each other. And then about 2 minutes later, Nyland looks at Brown. He says, "You ready to go again?" Brown says, "I'm ready to go again." They went at it a second time. They went about 3-4 minutes. They rested again. Then Brownie said another time, "Hey, Chris, you ready to go?" And they just went at it again. It was great. I'm glad I wasn't a fighter in that one. I wouldn't have lasted too long.
Hey, Mike Keenan, thanks for being with us, man. You're on the show right now. And Hexie claims that he pleaded with you twice to let him out. How did you keep him at bay? I mean, how did you hold him at bay? Why didn't he make it to the brawl?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on, and I thank these men that played for me. A great group of people to work with. And the Hexie story, I'm going to embellish it, Hexie. I don't know if you recall, but I think he went into the stick room. There was a stick room, or the portion of the coach's room where they kept the tape and so on. And I think you're coming in there again to ask me if we can go out. And I said, no. And I think I'm going to embellish it now. I said, I think I locked you in the cage so you couldn't get out.
You actually did. You locked me in the locker room.
Okay.
You put your back against the door and said, "You're not going out." And I begged and pleaded, and you said, "You'll get," I said, "I won't fight. I promise. I promised you I wouldn't fight." You said, "You'll get sucker punched, and that's not what we need." So then after a few minutes, I don't know.
Couldn't afford to have you out there. Bottom line, we couldn't afford to have you out of the series. So, and I knew your temperament. So, well-intentioned, great teammate, but not at this point. I'm not going to let you do that.
So I just want to sidetrack for a second. How many times do you think Mike pulled you while he was your head coach, Hexie? And I don't know the answer, but what's your guess?
I guarantee you not as much as some other guys he had.
No doubt. And did he ever pull you and put you back in? Like, Liam, you were telling me something I thought was pretty bizarre. Was there one game where there were more than one pulls and reinsertions?
Yeah. Well, game 4 in the Rangers series, Mike pulled Ronnie and Chico in and out 5 times, which is a modern day record. Last guy to do that was Punch Imlach with Johnny Bauer in 1965.
It's good company, Johnny Bauer.
Yeah.
Oh my
Even
God.
better, Liam. Even better than that, Liam. He'd tell me to go out and get them.
Yeah.
Hex for pulling them. Okay, Mike, I'll go out and tell Hex he's getting pulled again. That'll go well.
So wait a minute. Mike wouldn't stand on the bench and give the wave. He would send you out to deliver the bad news.
Yeah, just go out and get Hexie there, will you? Yeah. Okay, I'll go get him.
What if he hurts me? Oh my God. Hexie, did it feel the same every time you were pulled? Was the emotion the same? Or was it sometimes this shouldn't be happening, or I deserved it, or what? Was it all the same when you were pulled?
Well, it's definitely, I mean, there's times where a coach does it obviously for momentum, or he wants to play you the next night or whatnot. And there's other times where you weren't playing very good and you deserved it. But I always took it upon my own shoulders, like I should have been better. Even if you let a goal and it maybe wasn't a terrible goal, but it wasn't great, well, I should have been better. So I always looked in the mirror at myself, and you know what, you got to be better. It's no different than Poulin or Howie or Mess. I mean, if you're not playing well, your ice time gets cut, whatever. As a goalie, unfortunately, you come out of the net. So no goalie ever likes it, and I can assure you I didn't. I hated it. But it also drove you to. You certainly never wanted to get pulled. You wanted to finish the game and obviously, hopefully win.
Liam, can you give us a recap on the Oilers' third round that got into the finals, and get a comment from Mess, because we don't have that much time and we got to get to the final series because we got.
I know. Yeah. Well, I mean, they had the Detroit Red Wings. They had them actually back-to-back years, but they had them that year, and I lost the first game. Lost the first game to Detroit. Stevie Y played out of his mind in that particular game, but I think Mark said it earlier, and he can reinforce it. I mean, there was just too many guns, man. Just too many bullets in the chamber, and you just couldn't stem the tide. The Oilers rolled from there and then proceeded to meet the Flyers in the finals. But Detroit, again, like Winnipeg did, gave them a good go, got the first win, right, Mark? But then you guys just roared back, and just too much ammo, man.
Yeah, I think that's right. Detroit had a pretty good year. They were really coming along nicely. Really played well in the playoffs up to that point, and came right into Edmonton there and actually played better than we were going to give them credit for in that first game. And that's when we knew we had to buckle down again. And we had the ability to do that. Like you said, we had. In my mind, 85 team kind of got the nod as the best team of the century, but we did have an amazing record in 85. But the 87 team for me was as talented or just as talented as any one of the teams that I was on in Edmonton. Kent Nielsen, Rua Ruotsalainen, we just had depth, so much skill, so much depth. And then the goaltending, our goaltending was always never a problem. We never had to worry about goaltending. And to Liam's point there, we just too much depth.
So guys, let's fast forward. I want to move this along. We're trying to get this into our time slot. We got 15 minutes to go. So let's get to the finals. Oilers win the first two games in Edmonton. I don't know whether there was cause for optimism, but the Flyers come back home and win game 3, and then end up going down 3-1 in the series, but go back to Edmonton, win game 5, and then come back to Philadelphia for game 6, which was a legendary game in Spectrum lore and Spectrum history. So let's take us through this. Oilers up 2-0 after the first period. No problem, right? They're going to win the Stanley Cup again, and it seems like it's a foregone conclusion at that point. Lindsey Carson scores for the Flyers in the second period to make it 2-1. And then the third period begins with the Flyers trailing 2-1. Now, the Oilers have game 7 in their back pocket if they need it back home, but I've been in this situation. Everybody wants to finish it when they can. But in the third period, a goal was scored that started some momentum for the Flyers, and it was Brian Propp that scored it. Flyers were trailing 2-1, and all of a sudden the plot and the ground kind of shifted after Brian Propp scored this goal. Ed, if you want to roll that, I'm ready if you are, bud.
All right, they'll go with Crossman and Howe as the Oilers win the draw on ice it, and up front Eklund with Propp and Sinisalo. The Oilers go McTavish, Huddy, Coffey, and Dave Hunter. Puck into the zone, a little bit too far. Huddy tries to dig it away from Propp, takes it around behind the net, and Coffey a wraparound as Crossman gambled, was off the right point as the puck fired all the way around by Coffey into the Philadelphia end.
Boy, that was a great play by Huddy. Most players would have backhanded it up the boards, and the Flyers were waiting for it, but he held on to it to go the other way.
Flyers penetrate, drop pass, Propp off to the point, into the corner to Eklund. Straight out in front to Propp. Shot! Goal!
Pressure player. Talk about a player who has really had a great playoff. Brian Propp, nice give and goal, and when he did, he went right up the alley. The quick shot high up into the penthouse. And we have really been getting down on the Flyers power play, and it has not worked very well at all. But you only need time for it. And we only need one, and this is when they get it. Brian Propp, what a play! Kelly Eklund, Doug Crossman pick up the assist, and for Brian Propp, that's goal number 12.
All right, Mark Messier, are you guys okay at this point? No big deal.
I remember very vividly going into that game thinking, all of us talking, let's just go out there and whatever we do, let's get the lead. Let's not let the crowd get involved. We did a good job of it for most of the game. They scored to make it 2-1. The excitement started. And when they scored the second goal, as great as we were, we could not stem the tide of that momentum swing. It was just too much to overcome for us. And we're on our heels from that point on. And we knew it was going to be a tough game, and we did a good job holding the lead for most of the game and kind of keeping the crowd, as we knew it, fairly quiet. But when they scored the second goal, it was actually great to be a part of. But we knew it was coming at some point.
Mike Keenan, where was your head when that 2-2 goal was scored?
Well, we're getting the momentum for sure, Bill. And at that point, you could feel it in the bench and the spectrum. And you could feel the energy come around in waves to the bench. And at that time, that crowd was so important to this young team to give them the support, the boost, and of course, the volume of noise in the building in that particular game. And I know you're going to speak to JJ about his goal. It was one of the most electrifying sporting moments in Philadelphia history.
Wait a minute, JJ scored in this game? Of course he did. A minute and 24 seconds later, and we'll roll this video. This is what happened in the Spectrum. Most people consider it the loudest the Spectrum has ever been. Minute and 24 seconds after Brian Propp made it 2-2, JJ Daigneault became the hero of the evening.
Here comes Curry back along with Messier at the flyer line. Curry, Messier swings to the left, looks for the trailer for the net. Keenan on for the first time in the period. He has it behind the net. Straight away to Muni at the left point. Into Keenan, breaking in his Gretzky toward the net. Curry knocks down the pass. Picked off by the Flyers. And Crossman up to Zezel on the right wing with 5:39 remaining in regulation. Up the middle, a pass trying to find Propp again. The Oilers to the point. Daigneault is out. Score!
Boy, I'll tell you, these people are going crazy. This is when Edmonton has given up the blow line. We talked about it. Yuri Curry made a great defensive play, but the puck comes off the board slowly. Daigneault moved up very quickly, and I think Scott Melleby deflects that puck, and Melleby gets the lead goal. The Flyers have struck quickly here in the third for 2 goals. Less than, or just over a minute 24 seconds to be exact. They've given it to Daigneault. I guess Melleby did not touch it, but J.J. Daigneault very quickly moved up on that.
JJ Daigneault. I'd love to be able to see JJ. JJ, appear. So JJ Daigneault scores to give the, there he is. Hey, JJ.
How are you guys? Good to see you all.
Thank you, man. Thanks for joining us. Random question. How many times have you been asked about this goal in an interview setting?
Well, many times. It's obviously on an individual level, it's probably one of the best moment in my career, as well as a team level. But it was such a great opportunity for me to score that goal. When I say opportunity, there's a great story behind that goal too. I was a 21-year-old defenseman at that time. And believe me, Wayne Gretzky wasn't my matchup. Okay, it was more Howe and McCrimmon and Marshy and Samuelson. I was coming to the bench on that play, and after breaking out, and Mike told me get the beep out there, because I was gonna get off the ice since Wayne was on the ice with Yari with his line. So after coming to the bench and being told to get back out there, get the beep out there, I should say, I just closed my gap offensively. Yari made a great defensive play, killing that cross ice, intercepting that pass. Wanted to clear the zone. I think the puck took a funny bounce. I just skated into it. I had a great net front presence with Scotty Melleby net front. I always thought maybe he had a stick on it, but all I had to do was close my gap, cock my gun, and hit it as hard as I could.
I wondered why it took you long to get there, because you were tied up in the crease in front of Hexie, and then the play was going on in the offensive zone when you showed up, and I thought, JJ's a fast skater. There was never footage of what had happened. So you made a detour to the bench, and Mike said, no, go get the beep, get out there. And you got to the blue line, and you just made it, didn't you?
Well, exactly. And believe me, my teammates were quick to tell me after the game, hey, JJ, get out there and close your gap or just stay on the ice. And obviously I got to meet my ex-teammates over the years, talk who I played with in Arizona, Poulin, who I talked over the years as an analyst. And it's always a fun story. It's a great story, but it's always a fun story. And for the guys to tell me, hey, remember you were coming to the bench and you got this great opportunity just to close the gap offensively and pick up that turnover. So it's a great goal, but it's also a fun story behind it.
Sure. Some guys would think that moving from team to team is a negative, but Liam, you were telling me something before the game, and JJ, you were always an asset to every team that you went and played for, to the point of scoring big goals, right, Liam?
Well, yeah, I think it's one of the most unique accomplishments really in NHL history. Not only is he one of only 3 men to play with 10 teams or more, with Michel Petit, they each played 10. Mike Sillinger played with 12. But J.J. Daigneault played 899 regular season games. He played 99 games in the playoffs, scored 5 goals, Billy. 4 of them were game winners. 4 of them. He gets that game winner for Philly here. For Montreal in the semifinals, he scores the game winner to advance the Canadiens to the Stanley Cup Finals. In 1996, with the Pittsburgh Penguins, he scores the game winner to extend the series against the Florida Panthers. And in 1997, for the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, in Game 2 against Phoenix, he scores 2 goals, including the game winner, and he's first star of the game. Every goal he scored in the playoffs was massive. And I just think that's an incredible accomplishment for a career to move around as much as he did and contribute like he did was phenomenal.
JJ, a lot of teams made mistakes.
Exactly.
Well,
it's fun to hear that, Liam. You're really good because I didn't know these stats, but obviously I got on the rent-a-player program a little bit later in my career, and it was always fun, to join teams later in the season for a cup run, which I did with the Mighty Ducks at that time and the Penguins. And I remember it's funny because I remember the one time I went to play with I believe Nashville in Philly, and then 2 weeks later I think I was with the Coyotes, the Phoenix Coyotes back then. And so I walked down the hallways to get to the visiting dressing room, and I met John Leclerc. I crossed John, who I had played with in Montreal. Since I was there 2 weeks before with the Preds, and then now with the Coyotes, John says, JJ, everybody wants you. And it's probably the best thing it was probably the best lift I ever got in my career after being traded so many times.
It's the truth. So we got to.
Hey, Billy, I got to jump in for a second.
Yeah, man, go, Poulin, go.
I don't think we're going to have time to play Game 7.
No, but
Series
it's
even?
No, it's a footnote. Game 7.
Perfect time to run out of time, guys.
No, wait a minute. We got to get to the end of Game 6. Flyers, after JJ, you scored. The Flyers had 5 minutes and change to kill. When you're holding a lead against the vaunted Oilers for 5 minutes, it's like 5 days, right? When you're the team trying to catch up, it's like 5 seconds. So come right down to the final moment. Mark Messier has had to work so hard for almost every scoring chance he's gotten in his career. But he didn't have to work really hard at the end of Game 6 for 2 glorious scoring opportunities. And we'll roll tape right at the end of Game 6, which the Flyers would end up winning, give the punchline first. And Mark had a little help with his scoring opportunities. I know you're smiling, Hexie. Yeah. Here we go.
Magnificent. All you can say, you must be thrilled with this team and this series. There is no goaler in. The Oilers, though, the face-off will be at the center ice red line. Have to go with the 6. Out there is Ron Sutter, Samuelson, Howe, Kropp with Pocket. The Oilers with Anderson, Messier, McSorley, Gretzky, Curry at one point and Coffey at the other. The goaltender out, they go the 6 forwards. Ron Sutter. Take the draw at center ice. Oilers want to just get it in and chase. Puck drop. Rolls back to Howe. Howe lifts it through, and the Flyers jam it to the open net. Just goes wide, tights to Coffey, knocking it down. They try to come out with 19 seconds remaining in regulation. An outlet pass. Nielsen taps it through. They roll looking for Coffey. Now Hextall takes it. He lifts it high and not out. Open net. Save, rebound, tipped over the net. Centering pass. 5-4, back to the point drive. That's done. The Flyers are going to win it.
Mike Keenan, where was your head right there?
I would have pulled him.
Too late, Mike. Too late. Actually, you hadn't even started your goal scoring spree yet in the NHL. What the hell was going on with that play?
That wasn't about scoring a goal. That was, if you remember, the glass was low back then.
Yeah.
So I would actually go a lot through the middle rather than try to hit the low glass there. So that's what I was trying to do. And I've actually seen that play. I haven't seen that series. I don't ever want to watch it, but I didn't think Mess had a Michael Jordan extension there. Like, he gets off his skates, I'll bet a foot and a half, and grabs that puck. At least that's what I saw. So good play by him, bad play by me. I needed another foot or two under that puck.
Lift. Mess, is that as good a scoring opportunity as you had in the series? And because Hexie had no chance to control the rebound. He kicked the rebound right back out to you for a second chance. What were your feelings after missing those? Because when it's on the line, I know the whole world knows you want to be the guy. And there was whether it miscue, whatever you want to call it, you had the game, or at least the tie on your stick. What were your thoughts when the game ended and you hadn't put one away there?
Well, there was 30 seconds to go on the face-off, so we knew at the time was a bit of a problem for us. We just wanted to get the puck in deep and get anything at the net. I wasn't expecting to be able to flag down a high fly ball like that. It's probably the only time I gloved the puck in my career. I don't know how that happened, but I just remember thinking after, wow, that would have been a really tough blow for the Flyers, because they basically had the game when they scored the third goal. We were obviously pressuring them, but if that would have gone in, it would have been a really another momentum swing that we talked about all show long. But it's just the way it goes. Hexie actually recovered nicely, made not one but two good saves to secure the win. So. And that's what he did all series. That's why he was the MVP of the series. He never stopped. He just everything that we shot at him, he was able to make a save on it, and he made it very difficult for us.
Yeah, Game 7 would be won by the Oilers 3-1. The Flyers scored first. From a Flyers standpoint, to talk about it is kind of anticlimactic because you guys took the game away from them. Ron Hextall became only, I believe, the fourth player in NHL history to win the Conn Smythe as a playoff MVP on a losing team. And interestingly enough, the second Flyer to do it, because Reggie Leach had done it in 1976. And it was just magnificent. I got to ride along with Doc Emmerich the whole way, the whole series, from JJ, your goal, Mike, all of your moves, Hexie, your great saves, Mark, your magnificent play, Poulin. I'm assuming you played, although there weren't many choices for Mike Keenan. He had to match up against Mark Messier or Wayne Gretzky. So Poulin, I'm assuming that you played a whole bunch against two Hall of Famers in that series, Mark Messier and Wayne Gretzky. Howie, you were on the ice incessantly, as you always are. And as I said in our open, you made it look easy. I can't thank all of you enough. The Oilers
Billy, can I just say one thing about Poulin there? I don't know if people know, like, he had, I think, fractured ribs, Poulin. Remember, they walked in before every game and they're giving him a needle about that long. It was like, oh my God, like, he couldn't even move. And Howie, I think, was bad back. Like, these two guys are absolute warriors, and they're a big reason why we pushed Edmonton to 7 games, and certainly 2 of the greatest teammates you could ever have.
Well, Matt, I think Mess knew about the broken ribs, Hexy, because he cross-checked me on every face-off. That's why they wouldn't let me take draws. I said, Mess, I'm frozen. I got a flak jacket on. I can't feel anything. And he just laughed and cross-checked me again.
Well, with me,
So somebody knew.
on the very first face-off of game 1, puck came over to me just inside our blue line. I made a routine pass, and I got hit by number 11 over there, and it ended up, I had the worst Charlie horse I ever had in my career. If it wasn't for Pat Croce, I don't think I would have been able to play till game 4. So I was on crutches for a few days. I'm glad we had a couple days in between games where I couldn't have played. So, but I do have to say, I don't know, I played 1,200 games or whatever it was in my career. I forget the number, but I have to admit that game, the last 2 periods of that game, it's the greatest game I've ever seen a team play. It was a tidal wave that kept coming at us, and it wasn't for Hexy. I mean, the score I think might have been a little more lopsided, but I got to give the Oilers credit. I know we had some injuries; they had to have some. It was a great series, but yeah, I was like any game I've ever played, watched. That's as great a hockey team I ever saw play for at least 2 periods.
Well, I think we can agree we lost to the best, gentlemen.
I think we did.
Well, from my standpoint, you are all gladiators and warriors. You have to be to get to the Stanley Cup final, especially multiple times in a decade. This has been so much fun. I can't thank you enough for making this so damn easy and so much fun. Dave Poulin, former captain of the Flyers, Ron Hextall, goaltender extraordinaire, Howie, a Hockey Hall of Fame, Mark Messier, you ran out of fingers on one hand, so you had to put a ring on your second hand, 6 rings. Mike Keenan, Stanley Cup champion, winner in New York Rangers, and a proud coach of the Flyers. JJ Daigneault supplied one of the greatest moments in Flyers history with that goal in Game 6. And Liam McHugh, it's always great to work with you, man. And none of this would have been possible without the efforts of the president of our Flyers alumni, Brad Marsh, who I love and respect with all my heart. So, gentlemen, thank you very much. I have a few people to thank. I got to thank Joe Theodore, Ed McAvoy, and our sponsors, Dan Majani, Payroll Service Solutions. Danny and I are good friends. He always supports our endeavors. We try to do good things. We try to help people, and our alumni does a great job. Mark, I know your Edmonton Oilers alumni does a great job. You've all been a great portion of people's confinements for who knows how long. Some things are opening up. But if this hasn't been a fun hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes, whatever, the next one will be even better. Thank you, guys. Liam, Dave, Ron, Howie, Mark, Mike, JJ. You guys are the best. See you soon, I hope.
Thanks,
Be safe, guys. Thanks,
everybody. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great job, Liam. Good job, Bill.